Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just by way of announcement, Kirk Adams is joining us by phone today, so he's here. And also, for those of you watching the live stream, any documents, we can't turn the camera, so documents that we'll use in our meeting today will be posted to Assembly. If they're not already in there tonight, they'll be there available tomorrow, so just get on Assembly and you can find all those documents on the website there on Assembly. Okay, I'll take a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions on any of the items on the consent agenda? All right, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. We'll move right into our discussion items. Lisa has our good news story.
Yeah, so what we wanted to talk about tonight was a team that's been created at the high school. So we have Mr. Sean Sharp and then Mitchell Hill, one of our assistant principals, have worked together and really kind of from the ground up created an esports team for some of our students. And so currently this last semester, we had 31 students that were active in it that actually competed in the games. And then we had about 20 others that were alternates or would help support that. And there were 3 different games they competed in called Valorant, Overwatch, and Rocket League. It's really a national competition. And so each time they competed, depending on how they were bracketed out, they could compete really anywhere in the United States. And so we placed several times in the top 100 to 200, which there's several hundred teams involved. So they really had good showing. Essentially, like long term, the goal is to really be one of those teams that's in the top of that and able to nationally compete in person. And so they would pay for them to go do that. And so I think the fun part about this is it really was an opportunity for a lot of our students who maybe didn't have a different team, club, something that they were involved in. It really reached out to some of these students and it was a really big success this first round. So they're going to continue it in the spring. Mr. Sharp and Mr. Hill, really just wanted to shout out to them for the time and effort they put in and really just because they felt like there was a niche there that they could help support students in. So we just wanted to say thank you to them and let you guys know that that's occurring there. So.
Very cool.
And crazy enough, Boise State has an esports team, and they give scholarships.
It's huge.
Yeah. So
Yes.
having this is actually something that our kids can participate in, and
I will concur because my daughter has her jersey hanging up at Boise State for that. So
right.
it is a
Mr.
cool
Hill and
thing.
Mitchell Sharp are going to put together kind of, for lack of a better term, a flyer for you guys with some of the stats from the year, just so you can see. And they're working on getting jerseys and yeah.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Our next discussion item will be Alicia Krantz, and she'll do district finance for our mid-year report.
You can stand wherever you want to
I
stand.
think you should be on the camera.
So I'm going to give the district financial mid-year report. This report is included in Assembly, and I believe you have a copy.
And there's a paper copy there at your
Thank you.
station.
So the summary of the major fund balances, these balances are as of the end of November. The beginning balance number is based off of the audited report. So it's a July 1, 2021 balance. Everything is looking really good. Everything's positive, and there's no concerns in any of those funds. The general fund, as of the end of November, we have completed the first 5 months of our fiscal year, or 42%. We've received 65% of our anticipated general fund revenues, and we've only expended 28% of those general fund anticipated revenues, or excuse me, anticipated expenses. The coronavirus relief and response funds, the CARES Act came out in the spring of 2020 when things first started getting active. There were two funding sources, the Idaho Rebounds Coronavirus Relief Funds. In those funds, we received the governor's special distribution, which was just $1.2 million. The distance blended learning at $192,933. The technology monies of $10,000 and some relief funds for child nutrition in the amount of $23,885. All of these above allocations have already been expended. Then the second funding source was the ESSER monies, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. ESSER 1, we were allocated $294,748. There was a set aside for LMS, or the Learning Management System, in the amount of $41,526, and a set aside for some social emotional learning in the amount of $10,294. All of these allocations have also been expended, fully expended. The second act that came into play for ESSER was called SURSA. Those allocations were distributed in February of 21. There was a state set-aside reserve of $449,390. This money was expended within the spring of 2021 and was used to offset the support unit values, if you recall, went from 27,000 to 22,000, so it went to offset that within our general fund. The flow-through discretionary in the amount of $1.1 million was to cover the cost of the December May stipends for administrative and classified staff. Those respective benefits, the passenger vans that we approved earlier this year, and the skyward migration to the hosted server. The third round of ESSER dollars was funded through the ARP Act. We had a flow through discretionary in just over $2 million. Our plan is to use this to set aside monies for the PISA, which is the Public Educational Stabilization Fund. Thank you, sorry. It was also used to offset the general fund shortage, should we have one, based upon due to the ADA versus the enrollment funding factors and longevity stipends. Also in ESSER 3 monies, it's mandated that we set aside 20% of that total allocation for learning loss, and we are planning on doing that. The next piece of money that also came was Building Idaho's Future Funds, which includes the K-4 learning loss and the K-12. We anticipate these to be fully expended by December 15th, which is Wednesday. So that money shall all be expended. The final piece was Idaho Rebound Substitute Recruitment Funds in the amount of $133,000. And we did use all of this money to completely, to increase our substitute pay, to use for any type of teachers who covered for other classes, and scheduled prep time. So those are expended. So with that, I would ask the trustees if there was anything else that they'd like to see in future reports from the business office.
The ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 funds, are they not expended? They're still remaining?
The ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, ESSER 2 is almost fully expended,
okay,
or anticipated to be fully expended by the time we get through the December May stipends. And ESSER 3, we're currently working on, but we have plans.
So,
So they've been budgeted, just not.
yeah, so the general fund, we're at 42% of our fiscal year being completed and 28% of general funds being expended. What, help me understand, should we not be 42% spent of our budget or no?
You would think so, that we should be similar to that. My feeling is we're using so much of the ESSER monies that have to be expended. The learning loss monies had to be expended by December 15th. So we're using those monies to fund what we're currently.
So you feel like that's offset that,
Yeah.
made up for that other
Yes, sir.
percentage? Okay,
Exactly.
makes sense.
Do we have any idea when they might have this ADA enrollment conversation?
There's two different possibilities. One is here in December, the state board, is that this week? Or was that? It's this week. So state board is meeting this week. The state board could choose to make that a rule that would be retroactive for this whole year. And then we would be able to plan on enrollment for this year. They could also choose to not act on it at all with the idea that the legislature is going to address the need. So we're just kind of waiting to see. Initially, we got the word that there was a push to have the board take that action and then let it take the action for this year and the legislature put something more permanent in place. But you know, that it was kind of a political hot potato that they were passing back and forth. So we'll know at the end of this week if the board is going to take action, because they would not take action if it was during the legislative session.
Right.
So this is the last board meeting prior to the legislative session that they would.
How close, did we get our final enrollment numbers? Like, when they do our cutoff, we hit that date already, right?
Yes.
Like, how close were we from what we budgeted to what our actual numbers were?
We budgeted at 95% and we were at 92%, just
So
shy of
pretty close.
92%.
Okay.
So we were close, yes.
And we will be applying for a waiver for some of those weeks that were lower, you know, because there were a lot of times we told kids to stay home, that they would have normally come. And so our attendance was, you know, down in the 88. You saw that in some of those reports that would come through. So if we can get those up, even up to 92, that's going to bring along additional funds as well.
Okay.
And so as Alicia and I were talking, this particular document was just something we thought, you know, either on every year and halfway through the year, we should look at this, or even quarterly. And I don't know if you as a board think that would be better for something that's okay to wait and then just do once, you know, halfway through, or if you wanted to see something like this quarterly.
I think
I think quarterly.
Okay, so we will plan on presenting that, and that just gives us more touch points to see where we're at. Is there any other questions or things that you would like us to include within that report that might be helpful?
Just some basic stuff. I know we had some goals to replace kind of our rainy day fund and things like that, figure out where we're at with that.
Okay.
And then once we look at that, then start that benchmark. We have money. We have to spend it. It's not, you know, I mean, it's not like we give it back. It's not like it sits in a bank account. We spend it for the benefit of education for our kids. So what maybe another priority that we hit next, whether that be you know, focusing on earlier adoption of new books and stuff or what have you. Just sorting out some plans for somewhere where we're coming. I mean, we're ahead of the curve here by what, 14%. So that's not bad. If we don't need to save it, let's spend it to the benefit of the kids.
Right. Okay.
I appreciate the format too. I think
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
nice. So anyone who logs on can see it. It's really clear and concise. So thank you. Okay. Anything else you guys have? Okay.
Do we want to take a minute to do Deca?
Oh, yeah, we're gonna go to discussion item H real quick and we're gonna talk about the Deca regional competition trip.
So, Mr. Weiniger, would you like to come up and just give an overview of that trip for the board? You can stand there or at the podium, either way.
So Deca is our business club at the high school. We are not a very big club at this point. We grow. This is a regional trip. So what this entails is we're going to go to Coeur d'Alene. The kids, I think I have 8 kids on the list. They're going to participate in a couple different events. They're going to prepare some events, and then we'll participate in some role play events too there. So they kind of become specialists in a different area. Maybe they're doing a business ethics event, and so they really study that area, and then they get a role play. They come and they get some time to prepare a strategy, and they present their strategies to the judge. That's a role play event. So it's kind of fun. They have to think on their feet. They have to be good presenters. They have to take a test beforehand too. And this will prepare them for the state event, which is in February. Deca it's fun, I enjoy it, and we hope to continue to grow, but we're asking for the approval to go to Coeur d'Alene on January 9th through the 11th, I believe it is.
Any questions for Mr. Weinberg?
How are you driving in January?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's definitely weather dependent.
Okay. Any other questions?
It's a great opportunity. Glad that kids get to do stuff like that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will now go to discussion item C, negotiated agreement change proposal.
And I'm bringing it up here, so what's in your guys' packet, when we downloaded it, the suggestion didn't load. And so really the only change, we were asked by the MEA to reopen negotiations and look at a few items. This was one of the items that was brought forth, and this was ratified by the MEA, and it's really to change the language under D. And we give staff, so when funds are received, they'll be distributed monthly through the June payroll in one lump sum, or in one lump sum in December. And so the original language just gave that June through June payroll option, and then they wanted to see if we could offer that one lump sum in December for those staff members who have received these awards through the State Department. And so this language is what we're asking for approval from the board tonight on, in the negotiating agreement. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's a really pretty simple, it was kind of more an oversight that we didn't include that in there, but we couldn't give that payment if we didn't make the adjustment to the overall.
I just don't want a bunch of teachers going to Vegas and.
So any questions on that part? Okay, so tonight, the voting will be on this adjustment only. Just so for your information, the association also requested that we consider an additional stipend for the teachers, similar to how they were given a stipend last wintertime, November, December timeframe. And as they presented their thoughts on that, we there was a lot of information we just didn't have available. And so we're still working on putting some of that together, but we're looking at our ESSER funds, what's available there, making sure that we don't go beyond what we know we've got to pay out there. We did do a survey of what other schools in the SIC, other districts in the SIC are doing. And it ranges. I mean, there's no real set pattern. Some are doing things for both certified and classified. Some are doing just for almost across the board. There's something for classified similar to what we're doing for our classified staff. But not all are doing certified, anything for certified, but some are, and those range anywhere from $250 all the way up to like $2,500. And so that's something that we were, they've come to the negotiating table asking us to consider. And so we have a meeting set tomorrow. Alicia was a part of the board representative in the first meeting, and will continue to be that board representative in our meeting tomorrow. We'll present the information and then come back to you as a board in January for with a proposal if need be. Any questions on that part? Okay.
And there's always minutes of the negotiation, like when we meet with the negotiation team. So if you guys ever want notes or anything, just reach out and let us know and we can give those to you.
So do we need an action item on this?
No, there won't. There will be an action item on the wording there.
The first part.
So when you're voting for that, it's just for that wording, nothing about the stipends.
Okay, let me see that. All right, our next one is our strategic planning survey report.
No,
Middle school.
Oh, sorry, middle school handbook change proposal. Sorry.
So in your guys' packet, you'll see that the middle school is proposing to add what's highlighted in blue at the bottom of that. And what they're asking is that we add the language under tardies, that tardies due to excessive traffic will be excused with a parent phone call or note from the parent. You guys remember, you always approve these handbooks at the start of the year. And so if we make any kind of modification to that, we need to bring it back to you for approval. And so obviously with traffic on Main Street and some of the things we've seen there, we've seen an excess here, but they want to make sure that parents understand they have the ability to excuse that for their students. So that's really the purpose of this addition that they're requesting at this point.
Any questions on that? Again, pretty straightforward. Okay,
Now we'll do the strategic planning survey report.
okay. Let's start with just that general strategic
Okay.
plan, and Lisa will put that up on the screen there. But I just wanted to kind of do a general overview for you as a board. You've seen the results of the surveys, but I wanted to just go through and highlight some of the things that we've looked at. Additionally, with some of the open responses, we did go through and make some summaries of those open responses. So, if we had 40-something, we had 40-something people on one of the questions talking about impact fees. Well, it was just a way to kind of narrow that and help us at a glance see what people were saying as they were typing those out. So if we can go to, actually, if you'll move to question 5 on that first one. The first set of questions are the same with all of the surveys. The first question is we ask them for their name and their email address, which I haven't included here. We asked them to tell us whether they're a parent, certified teacher, classified teacher, if they live in Middleton but they don't have students, or if they were a student that took the survey. And overwhelmingly, about 75% of those that took these surveys were parents. And in a lot of those cases, if a parent was also a teacher, they had to decide, and we didn't tell them which way. So some of those parents might also be teachers, and likewise, some of the teachers might also be parents. But we had, for this particular survey, the overall, we had 903 total people that took the survey, with different numbers finishing each question. So for instance, on question 5, you'll see that there's 682 that answered that, and 221 chose to skip that question. So as we're looking through, but overall, that's a healthy response to the survey. If you're thinking of, typically, if you would think of households within our district, just talking districts that have students in there, we'd be looking at probably close to 2,500, somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000, 2,500 and 3,000 households. So they'll have 3 or 4 kids in there. And so we're hitting close to 20% of the households that answered. And so that's a pretty healthy. Obviously, it would be more is better, but so this first question listed a number of areas that we had identified as areas that needed significant planning, and we asked them to rate those in the order of most important. So each person ordered these responses. And would you scroll up to the numbers there? So we've got what's out. Yeah. So as you see here, 4.42 is that planning, curriculum, and instructional improvement. So that score on the far right, that's the indicator of what had the most, most of the high ratings. So you can see there was 33% that gave that a number 1 as their first choice. So the top responses here were planning, curriculum, and instructional improvements, and then planning new school facilities to meet community growth and needs, and then planning and implementing new programs like science, technology, engineering, and arts and math, career technical education. Those are your top 3 within that first question. And then the next one is one of the summaries there, if you'll bring that up. So then the next question, we asked them to write any other aspects that they felt should be considered in their strategic planning. And this question, you can see that the top 3 there become that safety, facilities, and traffic. Those were the top comments that people said in terms of other aspects that maybe we didn't include. Instructional considerations, that's a pretty wide thing, but it's something about specifically what's happening within the classroom. Staffing and retention, and wages, that was number 3. Academic program triggered number 4. You can read down through and see there, but so overall, again, some good information for us as we start making additional plans. And just to interject here as a reminder, the whole point of these is to help us as we start through our strategic planning in terms of our facilities, looking at what we'd be bonding for, things like that, as well as doing our academic strategic planning and how we'll be moving forward. And please just go ahead and interrupt if there's any questions as we go. I'm just gonna go through on that in general here. So the next question, identifying areas that are strengths. And if you look at this one, the numbers let's go down to the number page there. People could mark as many as they wanted here. So this, your percentages aren't going to add up to 100. But the top response in terms of things that we should, or that we identify as areas of strength, their top responses from the people who took the survey was communication to parents and students, followed by high school athletics, followed by advanced opportunities for students, and that's dual credit, college and career readiness. 4 being reading, writing, instruction at the elementary schools, and then math at the elementary school. 5 is cooperation with the community, and then math at the elementary schools. So those are your top responses in terms of what the community sees as going well. If you move to the next one, and we'll skip over the summary on the other there, because there's not very many responses there. Just the next one, we asked them to identify areas that they felt needed improvement. And so the number 1 was that they listed there was math instruction at the middle and high schools. Number 2, career technical programs, also known as VOTEC. We refer to them often as CTE. Number 3, mental health support and counseling. Number 4, reading, writing instruction at the middle and high schools. 5, maintaining existing facilities, and then math instruction at the elementary schools. So those are areas that the people who took the survey would identify as these are things we should be looking at. And again, we're going to take all of this and start diving in and looking at what we need to do to shore up, because in none of these areas are we perfect. And so just giving, having an idea from our community of what they see as a need is important.
Maybe just as a side note too, we are, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but in our math adoption is up in the cycle again. That's kind of where
that'll be
back to
next year.
We're in the middle of CTE this year.
Yeah, so as they write the strategic plan and you discuss that, know that you have those opportunities coming. And so that can help, the strategic plan will help drive that adoption.
Right. Then we'll skip to question 9, actually. Oh, and that actually, we won't do much with question 9. If you'll just show it though. The last one we do with question 9, on each of these surveys, we ask people to tell us how they'd like to continue to participate. Meaning, and overwhelmingly, they like the idea of newsletters being sent either digitally or in the mail, website updates, social media. Those are the areas that, and that's pretty consistent as you go from survey to survey. So we won't review that for further. Questions on that survey at all? Any? Okay. Next one I'd like to look at is the academics survey. And we'll skip right to question 5 again, Lisa. Okay, so on question 5, we're asking them to rate these statements and how much their level of agreement or disagreement. So the first statement is the district offers high quality, rigorous, and engaging academic programs. As you can look there, you can see that the overall weighted average is 3.43. So you're in that neutral to agree range. For the overall average, with the greatest percentage in the agree area. The next one, teachers personalized instruction to meet individual student needs. Again, you can look at those percentages that with a 3.38, we're a little bit, again, in that neutral to agree. And then the same with students having access to additional academic support when needed. Statistically, not a lot of difference between any one of those three statements. They're all pretty much equal in terms of how our public looked at that. Next, what information regarding your child's education would you like to understand better? And this was just for us to try and get an idea of what they were looking at and what they don't know. Because a lot of times we find that parents, they want to be, they want to be involved, but they don't always know pieces that are important in there. So as you see, on this one, again, they could mark as many as they felt applied. The biggest one, though, was by far resources available to support. So, excuse me. I think that's an important, when they stand out that far, it's a pretty good indicator that's something that's important to our parents. And then, their academic growth and achievement assessments and their purpose. But I think that's, parents understanding the resources is, I'm actually really happy that was the one that stood out, because that's where parents, that's the role that they're going to be playing here, is to support what's happening at school as far as the academic learning is concerned. Okay, and we'll skip over the other on that one. Okay, so the questions, yeah. So these are just some of the other, people could type in. So knowledge of their academic programs. Yeah, right there. So knowledge of academic programs, advanced courses, dual credit, those kind of things, but not a lot of overall other questions besides what we posted there.
When did we lose our theater program? Just last year? Was it before
It's been a
COVID?
couple, hasn't it?
Is it separate than drama, or is it the same thing?
Not the same.
It was the same thing in high school.
From what I understand, it was a much more comprehensive program. We have drama and theater offerings now, but they're offered we have a math teacher who's also doing those classes, and there's some after school, but not as much as what we had.
Okay, so
prior.
it seems like they used to travel and go to competitions and stuff, so, okay.
Okay, next, how well do you feel Middleton School District carries out curriculum and instruction in the following areas? And then again, I think here you can, we'll just stay on the graphs. You can see where the bottom there is doing extremely well. The blue is, doing very well, moderately well. And so the more it shifts to the bottom, the better that our community feels like they're doing. My goodness. So again, these are things that we will, as we're working through our strategic planning, we'll be taking a lot of this information to work on. The next one, how satisfied are you with the number of opportunities offered to Middleton School District students in the following areas? And if we can go down to the numbers on this one. The top two there are dual credit and advanced placement, both scoring in that neutral to agree area. So still room for improvement even in those areas. But you can see that career technical education, science, technology, engineering, arts and math, and job shadowing internship, that is below, that's moving from the neutral to the less satisfied range. And so something that we will want to be considering as we start looking down the road in some of these. And we'll be talking about that as we move into bonding, but go ahead.
Idaho has been really supporting the STEM program.
Right.
And has a whole division that we could, I don't know how much we take advantage of it, but
Yeah,
it's pretty cool when I checked into it
at the conference.
convention.
Yeah, no, and we'll actually talk about this on another topic tonight. I think there are actually a lot of opportunities we have to try and address those needs that our public have said, these are areas that need to be, that are lower. Next question, how important are the following tools to the academic successes of students? You can see the top is there that was listed as technology for the teachers, projectors, laptops, speaker systems, etc. Followed by internet resources for students, computer devices for each student. You can kind of see how those are laid out.
I kind of love to see that the hard textbooks are still holding their own. I
Yeah.
prefer textbook. Like, I really am. I'm glad that we keep sets in the library for kids who I personally don't like to read on a computer. So
Yeah.
just so you guys know, there are things in the library. If you ever want a hard textbook, there's sets in all the libraries.
Right.
In college too, I didn't know to buy
Yeah.
those.
And then can you move to question 10 on the summary? Perfect. Okay, so this question, please share any other thoughts that you have of items that should be considered for academic programs in the next 3 to 5 years. And again, just there was kind of a theme with a lot of these questions of increased academic rigor, just across the board. A lot of times it was not directed at any particular program, just looking for ways to, improve what we're doing for our students and push them to achieve. Review use of online and hard copy resources, which is again something that we'll do with every adoption cycle. Add advanced and AP courses, increase offerings of foreign language, and offering additional courses. A theme there of additional options for student foreign languages, advanced courses, etc. Okay. And then on these summaries, you'll actually see we have an area called miscellaneous comments, and that's just, they really didn't fit anywhere, but they were comments that we wanted to make sure that we kind of noted that they were there, and those will be available for people to look at as well. Okay. Any questions on that survey? Okay, I appreciate you taking the time to work through these with me. I just think it's important that we, especially with our public, we are able to look at these, and we will be putting all of the results on our website on that strategic planning site. So anybody who wants to look at those results can do that. We will have to redact a few of the comments just because they were kind of directed at a particular person, and we don't want to have that within, but those were like maybe 2 or 3 comments that have to have something like that. The rest are really quite positive. I mean, even if they're talking about a negative thing or a concern, they're not bad in how they approach it. So, okay, on this facilities survey, we'll move to question 5 again. Wanted to note that on the facilities and academic surveys, we had fewer overall respondents, 450 total, or I'm sorry, 463. But question 5, this is obviously focused on our facilities and things, and if we can go right down to those numbers. The first question is show your level of support for the following efforts to look at growth. First one, level of support for the school district bonding to build new school facilities. You'll see that the combination of supportive and very supportive in that area is 78.75%. And then you've got another 10% that's neither supportive nor unsupportive, and then about another 10% that are in that unsupportive. So I think that's a good indicator of at least some interest in being willing to look at. I have to say, we have to be cautious in taking that and saying, okay, 78% of our public, because this is 78% of the 400 in our community that took the survey. I have seen school districts in the past look at those kind of things and say, oh, well, this is going to be easy. We can just, we got 78%. We only need 66. But, in terms of who actually comes out to vote, that'll obviously be different. But then you can look at bonding to add additional classrooms. Well, actually, the next one that came in is bonding using a combination of building new facilities and adding additional classrooms. And then you see bonding, just adding additional classrooms using a bond. And then the last one, the one that got the fewest responses, was the school district using a plant facility levy. And as you remember, using a plant facility levy, you have to kind of do what you get during that year from the levy. You can't do the whole amount. And so it limits the amount that you can do. And we did explain that to people that were taking the survey. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next one, it's a question: school district were to request authority from patrons to bond for school construction, and it was determined that the multiple buildings would be needed over a period of 5 to 8 years. Which scenario would you prefer? And then you can see really quite close in terms of bonding for all the buildings at the same time, or having a plan for each building but then bond one at a time. But then the one that didn't get much is to bond for a building, then go through a process, and then bond again and go through the process. So that's how the folks that took the survey would look at that. The next question is: there's multiple options for school buildings that would meet the needs of our students, and we had some descriptions of those. So we talked about, and if we'll scroll up, the top response, and this was asking them to put that in order from first to fourth. So which one got the most? Number one would be that new elementary school, followed by remodeling one of our elementaries as a STEAM school: science, technology, art, and engineering and math. And then followed by adding on a career technical education center. All of those, you're talking in a range from 1 to 4, are in that 3 to 4 range. So even though one might be lower, they were all pretty close and in a higher. There isn't one of those that necessarily goes way beyond or is way out of the line with what people might think. And then if we we had a summary on the next one. Do you have other suggestions for how the district could meet facility needs of our students as we continue to grow? So one of the big ones here was imposing impact fees and taxes. Now, part of that is that these were open responses, so people typing their responses. One of those things that we have to help educate our community on is that we have no authority to levy an impact fee as a school district. Another thing I think we need to make sure is a part of that conversation is that impact fees by themselves could help address some pieces of funding for schools, but you can't build a school off of the impact fees. It's just the amount is too high. I mean, you'd be talking.
You have no money.
What was
If
that?
they're not building houses, you have no money.
Right.
You have to have like $20,000.
20,000-30,000 per lot. So
Oh, yeah.
To come,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it just
No, yeah.
wouldn't work.
So that's not going to work. But there are impact fees that could help offset some of the costs for maintaining buildings that would then allow us to use other state funding for some of our other programs that we have going. Closing open enrollment, and that is something that we have done. We have not sent students that are not in our district away, that are here already away, but we are not accepting. Since the very first day of school, we have not been accepting new students unless their parents had a building contract here within our district, or if they were a child of a school employee. And then the next is bond considerations. Make sure that we're communicating there. Okay. Next, question 9, how important to you are the following factors as we contemplate district facility needs? The number one factor here is keeping class sizes low. You see that one is really high. Very few of those that responded saw that as not as important. They were about 90% in that important, very important. So, and that just, that connects to the idea of adding buildings and facilities, because there's no way we keep class sizes low unless we have classrooms to put them in. And then after that, that's followed by improving the maintenance of existing buildings and upkeep of existing arts facilities. Those were the top 3 responses there. Next question, number 10, how supportive are you of supplemental levies used for student programming in our school district? And as you can see from those that responded here, we have just over 70% that are supportive or very supportive of a supplemental levy. That will feed into our conversation in our next item, but neutral 14.5%, and then 13% in the not supportive range. Next question is an open response. Question 11, share questions you have regarding our current supplemental levy. So again, this will be towards our conversation of our next item on the agenda. The top response there was, see, right there, educate, communicate for transparency. So making sure that our community knows what that's being used for, what the current levy is used for, what we would be using the next levy for if we were to go for one. There's a big piece to build and repair trust. And, in the conversations that I've had and in the responses, you saw a connection with that build and repair trust and the communication and transparency. The more you do that, the more the trust will be there. All right, next question is 12. Share how you feel about the following ideas for school properties. And these are talking primarily about things like the district office, the maintenance building, what used to be the technology building, selling some of the property. Oh, mine is cut off there. I got to look up there. Let me bring up I can give you the full amounts there. All right. Okay, so the top one there, oh my goodness, give me 1 second, sorry.
Mm-hmm. 26 total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the top response there, if the district were to build an elementary school, do so on the property the district already owns on Meadow Park. So that one had a 3.93. So right there about at that supportive level. The next one would be selling some of the district property on Main Street, district office maintenance building, and using the proceeds to build in areas less congested. That goes back to a lot of the traffic questions and concerns. And then removing the aging building on Main Street, 2.97, 2.89. You can see that those are heading into that unsupportive range between unsupportive and neither supportive, kind of neutral. Next question regarding the recreation center. It's run by Greater Middleton Parks and Recreation. We asked several questions regarding how we could approach this. And the responses, we gave several different options. The responses continue to lease the building to the Greater Parks and Recreation Department, sell the building to Greater Middleton Parks and Rec, selling the building and property to the greater Greater Milton Parks and Rec, donate the building and property. All of those have the end result being, it being a part of being used as a rec center. Those 4 different options there. And then you can see sell the building property and use proceeds to fund other building projects, 18.5%. Use the building to offset some of the district growth and stop leasing to the center, 6.42%. And so, as we're looking at that and making decisions, this isn't something you have to decide like today, but as we look, this would be something we could refer back to as this is how the community feels in terms of how that building should be used. Ultimately, it's the board's decision and responsibility to make that call. But this is information that we can use to share regarding that. And then the last one is just that same. Any questions on that survey? Okay.
Comprehensive.
So a lot of good information as we start digging in to doing some of that work on these different, there's a lot of projects that are kind of, this will start the process to get the wheels moving. Any questions overall on the survey report? Or I'll just remind the board and anybody that's watching and the public that this is our, all of this will be presented to, this will all be on the website starting tomorrow. And going back to that, the rec department's, question there, as we look at those kind of things, in terms of how we approach, getting a feel from the community, that's a positive way to move forward and look at, there's a lot of options we have in terms of how we can move forward with that, continuing as a rec center, continue with that leasing now, and that would be kind of what we'd be looking at moving forward. Okay.
Let's take a short recess, and seniors or students, if you want us to sign your agendas, we'd be happy to do that now and excuse you for the evening because I know you have finals to study for. So we'll just take a short recess and then come back in like 3 minutes.
Come up here. Might have to read
Yeah,
some of
anybody-
the
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna continue, our discussion items. Discussion item number F, the supplemental levy proposal.
Okay, and Lisa, will you bring that document up? With the supplemental levy, we've talked about this for several meetings, and in working with Alicia on,
Can we take
please.
just a quick moment to explain to anybody watching it, the difference between a levy and a bond? I think that's really important.
Yes.
And why we do the levy and not.
Right. So, a levy and a bond are going to be approached differently. There's two main differences. One main difference is how it can be used, and the other main difference is what it takes to get one passed. A supplemental levy can be used to supplement the maintenance and operations funding for the school district. And so essentially it can be used for almost any item. We'll go through what we've been using the supplemental levy that is currently on the books for the district here in just a second. But it can be used for almost anything. It takes a 50% plus one majority to pass a supplemental levy, and that's done at the voting booth. And those can be run for school districts in March, May, August, or November. A school bond can only be used for building physical facilities. A school bond takes a 66.6% supermajority to pass. It can be run on those same dates. It has another difference is that with a bond, all the funds come in automatically. Comes in at the beginning. We actually go out, and there are investors that buy the bonds from the school district, and then we use those funds to build our building, and then that's paid back. Those bonds are paid back over the lifespan, 20, 30-year lifespan of the bond. So you can see that there are different uses, different choices there. A levy, we have done 1.5 million per year. Levies can only be done for 2 years at a time. Supplemental levies. I won't go into plant facility right now because we don't have one and we won't be talking about one. But supplemental levies can only be used, can only be done for 2 years. And we get the funds as the taxes are levied each year. So we don't get that full 1.5 million right when people vote. If it's approved, then we get one set. Alicia, help me, in January and then in June.
Well, it trickles through the whole year, but the major payments, yes.
Okay. And so we can only use that once those funds come in. We can't borrow against it like we do for the bonds.
So basically, it covers the shortfall that we don't get from the government. Basically.
Correct.
It gives tax
Correct.
money.
This is to maintain operations of the school district. And like I said, the supplemental will go into what we have used that for. And you'll see that it's not a lot of fluff. This isn't so that we can have nicer offices or better chairs or anything like that.
Thank you.
So in August of 2020, the Middleton community approved a supplemental levy for 1.5 million per year for 2 years. That will end at the end of this year. And so what I would be recommending the board look at is a renewal of that levy for an additional 2 years. That would start, we would start receiving those funds in January of 22 if it were approved during this year at any point. So you can see what positions were restored. All of these positions, because as a history lesson for someone who wasn't even here, all of you know it better than I do, but the levy did not pass in March of 2020. And then when they had to the school district had to set a budget at that time. And at that point, they had cut all of these things that are listed here. And so when the levy was restored, we were able to restore these these positions. So you can see a big portion of that comes from our personnel, 25.1 personnel positions, 4.6 teachers, 1 district office, 1.5 pupil services and counselors, the 1 maintenance, 1 food service, 16 educational aides. Now, all of those positions have been restored. Now, with the educational aides, there are some positions we're still trying to fill because we don't have the people necessarily to fill those positions. But as soon as we find somebody we can put in there, we would restore that. Pay to play was reduced each year. We have restored the school resource officers and actually expanded those. The number of resource officers that we have available to the school district with the city of Middleton. Middle school activity transportation was restored in August. High school activity transportation restored this year. Science curriculum adoption was restored. Restoration of furlough days, supply budgets were increased because they had been cut. Just a quick note on furlough days, if you're not familiar with what a furlough day is, those are days that were in the contract, but we had to cut from teachers' contracts to make that work. And so those were the things that were looked at. If you look at the science curriculum adoption, that's not something that we would have to do again, but the math adoption is a large adoption. The CTE one that's going on this year is not as large, but the math adoption, and then the following year after the math would be social studies. Am I correct? Correct. So we would, those are some big ticket items that we would need the supplemental levy to help us work through. So those are, because of what you see there, and because we have not had a change in our revenue, meaning an increase in revenue that's beyond what we get for new students and teachers, because as those come in, we've added those. We just anticipate that that will be something, in order to maintain these things, it would be important to have a supplemental levy addressed from our school district. So that's my recommendation to you as a board, is that we look at running a supplemental levy for 1.5 million per year for 2 years. And that we would look at running that levy in March, during the March election date. Any questions from you as a board on any of these items?
Just to put that in the perspective, how many kids total that are in our district?
4,100.
Just getting a feel for what that is.
Per kid?
Divided by 41, yeah. $365 per kid. That's what it takes to do all those things.
Right.
Additionally, it's so and also growth affects the impact of that.
Correct.
Those levy costs. So as Middleton has grown, we actually are, the cost to re-up the levy is less.
For an individual person, yes, that is correct. And that's because we go for a specific dollar amount. If we were just a rate, then it would go up as values went up and things. But because it's a dollar amount, every person or every business or home that's built makes it so there's more people to help raise that
Your tax
amount.
base gets bigger.
Tax base gets bigger, the amount that's levied against the individual taxpayer goes down. So, I mean, I would hesitate to put a number to it, but you could definitely say that what someone was paying for the levy when the truth one was passed in 2020, they would be paying less because we're asking for the same amount. Other questions or comments there?
Well, just to be clear, so the last levy we did finally get passed, on average, dropped about $5 per 100,000.
Correct.
So it actually went down
Right.
by approving the levy.
By approving the
So-
levy.
chances are with the updated growth and everything else, I couldn't foresee that it would not be an increase.
Right.
As far as that goes, because of our increase in population and tax base.
Correct. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, so.
Just real quick, do we have a plan if the board approves this tonight, as far as one of the things in those surveys people were asking about is like communication and education? And
Yes.
we have a plan going forward to make sure that we get plenty of opportunities for them to
Yes.
learn about the levy or to ask questions and get it out so people.
Yeah, and we're kind of dovetailing that with waiting to see what ends up being decided in terms of bonds going forward, so that if we need to kind of put all that together. But we have some of our parents that helped us publicize the levy last time have offered to do the same again. We've reached out to that. We will have a committee that's looking for that. We'll be putting our website together to pull information, and we'll do everything we can we'll create options for different meetings for people to come and ask questions about it. That we'll be working through that for that levy for sure. Okay.
And then we'll go ahead and move to item G, the potential bond discussion.
Okay. So if you'll bring up that PowerPoint. Okay, so this is something that actually, if I can just step back, in your packet there was the resolution for that supplemental levy. When we get to the action items, we'll need to read through that resolution. It's kind of long and dry, but needs to be read to for the process. So, sorry,
It's okay.
it's only one page. So in looking at our needs as a district and getting that feedback from our community that I went through with you in that survey, one of the things that I would ask the board to start to consider, not to be voted on tonight, but to start considering, is the possibility of including bonds in this March election. And so if we can go to the next slide, we've talked about our, pre-taking the survey, there were some needs that we knew were coming. So one of the things is the growth in the district. And as you see that dip, just as a reminder, that dip in enrollment is due to the first one is the first year. So from 2018-19 to 2019-20 is when Forge opened. And so when they opened, a large portion of our students followed to go to Forge. And so our enrollment went down. And then the enrollment the next year went down, continued to go down because of COVID. There were many families that chose not to send their students to school, even with hybrid or online, whatever it was. So you saw that decline again. Since that time, it is kind of rebounded and started to grow again, and to the point that we are above where we were in that peak in 2018-19. And no question that we're going to continue to see that growth continue. Say it twice. So right here, what you've got is a listing, and this was based just on Middleton City. And these were figures as of 3 months ago. The number of lots ready in the next 6 to 8 months, 511, 554 in the next 12 to 18, another 1827 in 18 to 2 years, and then another 3,000 in 3 to 5 years.
That's Middleton city limits, or?
Just Middleton city limits.
So
That doesn't include
any of
Canyon.
Canyon County.
And that's primarily
Doesn't
going to
include any
impact
zone.
Middleton Heights.
Correct.
That's already 124% of capacity.
Correct. So when you look at those, the previously, and we have, Davis Demographics is supposed to be, they're conducting a study for us. We had hoped we'd have a draft version by tonight, but we didn't. Before our next board meeting, we'll have the full report from them. But in the last time Davis Demographics did a study for the school district, the potential number of students for those lots was based on a figure of 0.7 students per lot. And if you look at that, that's where those numbers, the 357, 387, 1200, 2300, that's where that comes from, is looking at the number of lots and the number of students that we could anticipate coming from those lots. So just looking at that, you can see that if that growth were to be realized, we could conceivably be almost doubling in 5 to 8 years in our total enrollment.
And that's just city limits.
That's just city limits, not including Canyon County. Davis Demographics will be looking at the entire thing.
Good.
When are they doing the same thing, Lisa, that they did a few years ago for us? Are we gonna have the capability again to use the computer program to manipulate that data and to draw like potential boundaries and stuff like that?
Yep, yep, and they'll provide that for us.
So that actually could be low then.
That could be low. He's actually thinking that the 0.7, the rate will actually come in lower than 0.7. He didn't want to say what, but he thought it's a good possibility it could be lower. But even if it was at 0.5 and you include those lots plus everything that's out in the canyon, there's still that potential for those same numbers of students. Because we see that potential and it's near, it's not 10, 15 years down the road, it could be in the next 5 to 8 years. My feeling is we needed to be looking at bonds as quickly as we could. So if we go to the next slide. After we took the survey, as you recall, as we were looking through, the top thing, and I just left that in there because it was the top, people said we needed to focus on, is curriculum and academics. Right after that, new elementary, address needs for CTE, address needs for STEM, and safety and traffic, in that order. That was the priority that our survey came back and shared. Let's go to the next slide. So what we started doing was looking at potential ideas for addressing some of those needs. One of those is a pretty simple, I mean, I say simple in terms of the idea, not necessarily the process of getting it, but a new elementary school. The district has plans that have, not been purchased, but are ready for if the district were to pass a bond, we have the plans ready that would look something like this. This is similar to, what's the name of the one in Valley View? Skyway Elementary.
Right across
They're all
2026.
kind of like that.
Yeah.
Nice, because you have a door out the classroom for all the teachers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great options there for teachers and students. Has a full gymnasium that can not just be used for elementary students, but for other district activities.
A stage and stuff on it. You can go look at that school if you guys ever want to. We toured it before. But these plans, the benefit of this is we already know that it fits the lot that we own. And we've already paid like a bunch of surveying stuff when we started down this road before. So a lot of the groundwork has been done. So we know it's going to fit. We know that we could accommodate what we needed to out of it.
I like the layout of this a lot.
So that would be, addressing that need for a new elementary school that, we've talked about how we're over capacity already. We have 4 portables total right now. Just looking at next year, talking to the principals, we might need an additional 2 or 3, at least 2, just to meet the needs of the students coming in. And portables are not the best way to facility for our students. So that's one piece. If we can go to the next. Another piece that would address some of the needs is modification of an existing elementary, like a Heights Elementary. You could take a Heights Elementary and modify that pretty easily to become a STEAM education center for elementary age students. So elementary students could go, that are attending that school, would have a focused curriculum. the younger they are, the more they're still gonna be focused on reading, because we still gotta teach them how to read. But everything else ancillary is gonna be focused around that science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
And
And
that could be K-8, correct?
it could be K-8, it could be whether we look at it K-8, K-5, you can do either or on that. But that was something that came to us in our survey, that's something that people felt was needed. The next item would be ideas of potentially addressing needs would be a CTE center, a career technical education center. The pictures you see there are from a center that was built in Cuna for Cuna High School. And we took a tour of that facility where we could actually build, if we looked at the CTE center, there's a couple of benefits to. One is we are able to add additional programs that we don't have, auto mechanics. This one, if you can look way back in that horizontal picture, you've actually got diesel mechanics. There's a diesel in the back there a model diesel that they work on. You could put a program like that together. There's others, CNA, EMT type classes, things that we haven't had a full program available for our students that we could provide. And again, that's what our survey said, is that's something that we're looking for. Besides those programs though, a CTE center would alleviate some of the pressure that's going to come on our middle school and high school, because the students that would be attending there would be leaving the high school, maybe not to attend only that CTE school, but as they leave, it opens up classrooms because they're not attending during that period. Additionally, and this is the model the one in Cuna looked like. They had 10 classrooms on the second floor, and then the CTE classrooms on the bottom floor. We could take our academy and place the academy here with the CTE building, since the majority of those students would be leaning towards these types of programs anyway. You could take those and that would free up space at the middle school. And so a CTE center rather than build, and this does not forestall, it doesn't mean that you would not have to build a middle school and a high school at some point, but it gives you some breathing room while that comes.
4 years. Oh, yeah.
And so we looked at that as just another option that we could use to address the needs of our students. And one of the things that CUNA said as they were working through is that they got a lot of community participation because the programs that were being offered there were things that the community was interested in. And so they actually had quite a few connections that helped outfit and pay for parts of, and I believe we'd have a similar response. As I've had conversations just about CTE Center, I've not had one person say they didn't like that idea of looking at that CTE Center.
So when CUNA did their CTE Center, did they bond for everything or just for the building, or did they use different funds altogether?
They bonded for everything.
So all the equipment, they went ahead and bought.
Well, with the exception of the donations that they received from some.
So did they do that as an individual bond, or was it tied or attached to something else?
I believe it was an individual
It
bond.
was an individual bond. Their long-term plan is this is a third of their future high school. So there's actually a wall on it that they intend on building off of to make their future second high school.
So is it on the same property as the high school?
No,
No.
this is down.
Linder.
Linder.
Okay. So
Not
it's
on your
separate.
flat, but yeah, it's just separate, but they have a lot out there that they're gonna expand to a full-fledged high school at some point.
Wow.
And they were looking at it in the same way. It was a way to bleed off because they didn't even have the bonding capacity to build a high school. They do now, as they've been experiencing the same growth, but when this was bonded for, they didn't have the capacity to do a high school, so they could only do a section.
Is this, do they run, like, community programs through here as well?
I don't believe they do very many community programs, but that's something that would be certainly worth looking at. We'd actually talked about contacting CWI to see if we could create some kind of partnership with them as they work through it. But so anyway, these aren't necessarily going to be like full-fledged, detailed out, this is what we would do. But in general, these 3 different projects could address a lot of the needs that we're facing right now. So if we can go to the next slide. And this is just reminding what we saw in the survey. 78.75% were supportive or very supportive of bonds and levies. Rate the importance of building projects. Elementary school was number 1. Considerations for facilities planning to keep class sizes low was number 1. Existing property, use existing property on Meadow Park Boulevard. And then as you look at the areas that our community felt like needed to be addressed, CTE was a big part of what needed to be addressed. We could go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk just for a minute about the bond financial planning. If we were to look at these kind of programs and how that would fit with what we're currently levying to our taxpayers in our community. The green line that goes across, you can see, is right at 4 million. We make essentially right now a $4 million payment each year towards the levy for the high school. The blue bars are the bond for the high school, correct?
Not the levy.
Correct. Did I say levy?
Yes, no.
Either way, yes, the bond.
Yeah, okay.
So that blue line, those blue bars is what we still owe for the high school bond. So that's going to be, and we actually pay those in $4 million increments. If we did it this way, it would be a little bit different. But if we were, what this graph is showing is if we were to just do an elementary school, the elementary school is estimated to cost about $28 million. If we were just to do the elementary school, this is what those payments would look like over the lifespan of the bond. And so you can see that right now, the county or the community is being levied at that $4 million rate. I mean, a dollar amount. Again, they're going for a dollar amount, not a rate. So that would continue to go down as growth. So, but we've been looking at trying to maintain the projects within that $4 million limit. So an elementary school easily fits within that. But if you could go to the next slide. So this is, you probably didn't even notice too much of a change, but existing bond plus the elementary plus changing the elementary school to a STEM still fits within that same line. And then if we can go to the next. Okay, so somewhere my word dropped off, but existing plus elementary plus STEAM school plus CTE school is what you see there. And that's about 50 million. And if we did that at about 50 million, you can see that, and our financial planners, you can see where it pokes up above 4 million there, and for 3 different years, our financial planners have actually said that they can work it so that those pieces are shoved down to where you see the gaps later on.
Gotcha.
But you can see that we could bond for $50 million
And stay
within what is already being levied against our patrons, and would actually, dollar amount would go down as growth continues, but it would obviously extend that amount for the number of years.
Because we're still limited, right? We couldn't pay 5 million.
We could if we bonded for it.
Okay.
Our bonding capacity as a school district is actually up to 135 million. It's grown significantly over the last, but
Too crazy.
yeah, I'm not saying that we should. In fact, that's why I didn't even bring it up. But but you can see that it's that bonding. We could bond for those projects and stay within that 4 million. Thus not not overburdening the taxpayers, because they're gonna be levied $4 million for the next 10 years anyway.
Yes.
That doesn't change. Nothing we're doing is gonna change that. It would just extend that beyond. And again, the amount they would have to pay as those years go forward would go down because the growth would increase.
So I mean, you look at this and you think, well, we're kicking the can down the road,
Right.
but we're kicking the can down the road either way because growth is growth. We have to accommodate
Right.
these kids somehow.
Right.
It's just, how can, I mean, and it's, I mean, I'm in the building industry and I'm looking at, you know, a sheet of plywood went from $20 to $80 this year. And so, you know, doing that at a time when it's affordable to do it, as opposed to watching it shoot through the roof.
What this does do though, it does allow us, so instead of having to build a new high school in 5 years, we might actually be able to get 10 years, because another option in elementary is you can pull those 6th graders out of the middle school and push them back if we have enough space in the
Well, but
elementary.
you got the academy out of there.
Well,
There's
right.
A lot of
But as
space
they
over there.
fill up those extra spaces too, so
Yeah.
we might be able to, and an elementary is 28 million, a high school is 50 million. I mean, it's significantly cheaper to build more elementaries than it is a high school, just because of the space. And it also gives us more gym space. Another elementary would give us the gyms that floor plan has like a stage and stuff too, the ones that they built over there, which is nice, and seating, which was nice. that they
You're gaining
keep those.
3-1. So go build a new high school for 50 million, or have existing plus an elementary school plus CTE and everything else, you're gaining 3-1
Mhm.
on your
Agree.
money,
Yeah.
on the same 50 million.
I
Right.
agree.
So if it's on today's numbers,
And providing good
Yeah.
opportunities for kids.
not counting what you're gonna gain from that, whether it's other options that you can use the community for with those existing buildings and everything else as well. Not just a
Right.
single, let's go dump 50 million into a high school,
Yeah.
where
No.
this makes more sense, especially with the vocational stuff. The CTE and vocational and stuff like that is definitely,
Yes.
because there are more and more students as our population grows that are not college bound.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact.
Yep.
And so we need to be able to support those kids going forward, that they've got a good educational experience, that they can go out in the workforce on the vocational side, because that's what's becoming more popular now anyway.
Right.
Mhm.
And there's where our shortage is.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
So I think that as we look at this, these are just what I would like to do if the board is good with it. I've got a committee of people that had said we'd be willing to work, to come in and bring input. I've got a committee, we have a plan to meet on Wednesday this week, and then we would meet again after the break. I'd like to put a proposal together for the board to consider for a March election, because we would have to have that passed in the January meeting in order to get it on the March ballot, just for the timing. So if you as a board feel comfortable, I mean, that's you saying go ahead and do that doesn't mean you're voting for it. It's just bring us a proposal in January. I'd see it as my job to make sure you had all the information you needed to make that decision.
let me ask you this. Do you feel comfortable that if we did that because we want to be as transparent as possible and be able to give enough education to our patrons, parents, family, community, and everything else, that we would be able to do that in that time frame?
And that is my biggest concern, is can we do that in that time frame? And so as part of my proposal, it would be showing you what I would do during that time, because we've batted this around a little bit as administrators and with a few people here in the community. There's the pros and cons. The pro of moving forward is we get it all done now and we can get to work on getting these things in place. The longer we wait, that growth is just going to keep pushing. It's not going to stop because we didn't vote for it.
Right.
So that's one side, but the other side is exactly what you just shared, is can we get the information out? Because what we don't want to do is create a situation where our community feels that we've pulled one over on them or anything like that. We want to make sure that all that information is out there. And do I believe that it's possible to do? Yes. But one of the hamstrings I have is that I don't know the community as well as you as a board and others. So that's one of the big questions that I'll ask that committee that's going to be made up of community members. I'll bring back what they recommend and then share that with you as a board and look at how we want to move forward.
So just being kind of the devil's advocate here, so say we approve this and we go forward and everything else, and you work with your community members and stuff like that on the committees, and you determine, hey, we might we might not be able to get that information to all those folks in a timely manner and stuff like that. We can push it, right?
Yeah.
We can push it to May, right? Okay.
Yep. And Alicia, if we put into the clerk, if we put the bond into the clerk, do you know when we can pull it back so that it's not?
Oh gosh, as far as publishing
Yeah.
the language, the ballot language, I am not certain, but I'll definitely give you that.
So we'll have that information as well.
Find out really fast.
And
Yeah.
will we continue to qualify, or does the state still fund all those bond equalization?
They do,
stuff
and
we
we
get right now?
do qualify.
So that's like paying our interest and stuff on
Nice.
all our bonds, so
Right.
the state.
This has it in there.
Yes.
Okay, and these numbers include using that bond levy equalization, what you're seeing in
Okay.
these charts.
Okay.
So anyway, that is, that's kind of where we're headed, and, I think there's some good opportunities for us to move forward. Any other questions or things that you would like me to make sure and bring back in January? And if you do think of something down the road, just don't hesitate to call and just say, hey, could you make sure and bring this to us in January as well?
What are your guys' thoughts about running the bond and the levy at the same time?
Not opposed to it if we get the information out there in a timely manner for the community to understand.
Educated, yeah.
Right. Obviously, what the difference between a bond and a levy is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
A bond is a mortgage on your house.
yeah,
A
Yes.
levy is the equity line.
right.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
that's plain and simple.
That's a great way to do
That's
it.
what
That
it
is a
really
great
boils
way to-
down to. And most people can understand that. If we can get that out to the general public and the community, and people feel comfortable, and we feel comfortable,
Yeah,
whether in the committees and the community people that you've talked to, then I would have no problem doing both at the same time.
I agree.
Yeah.
We have to
Kill
have real
two birds
numbers.
with one stone.
I agree.
So,
Real numbers.
Last
are gonna be
time,
important,
one of the
so that-
problems we ran into is we held like open houses and we had like published them, and we did them up at, what's the subdivision by high school where you live?
Oh, what's that?
Like the clubhouse, and the superintendent was there and the financial, and nobody came. And they did another one down, like they tried to get out. So I guess just when you guys talk about how to push out that information, I almost feel like it's easier to push it to everybody, whether they want it or not, than trying to invite them to come get it.
oh, no.
Well, I
agreed.
like his idea of
Agreed.
community members, because then if you get key people, they'll talk to their people, those people will talk to their people, and sometimes that's almost better received.
and there's another strategy that I've been looking at that was used both in the one district where I was at when it passed, and then another one was a big one that was Lewiston High School, which had gone 20, 25 years trying to pass bonds, and they hadn't passed it. And they used this kind of, essentially they did a whole bunch of little tiny community meetings where they would go to people's homes. Somebody would volunteer to let them use their home, and then they just invite their neighbors.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a open meeting that anyone could come to. It was just, and they did.
Comfortable to talk there.
Yeah, and what it did is it allowed you a chance to really educate, because in those bigger meetings, a lot of people don't want to ask the questions that they might have, but they'll do it if it's just them and their neighbors. And so that's another pathway that we can go as far as educating. And
I like that, just because too, they're getting the right information from the right people.
Well, the bottom line is the people in the community need to understand how it's gonna impact their wallets. Because that's really,
right.
there's a balance of a more educated community is gonna bring more money into the community. Plus, hey, if I bought at this level, I'm here, my taxes are here, this is going, what's that gonna do to affect my monthly expenses when I gotta pay for groceries too?
Right.
So that's just super, I think it's just gotta be super clear if this really is gonna impact anything, it's just gonna be smooth sailing straight as it is now,
Mhm.
great. But if all of a sudden it's gonna bump it up another $250 a month, that would hurt, right?
Well, and another thing that we need to make sure they understand that we don't have control over is the assessed value of their homes and things, because that will shoot their cost up because of other things. And so we could say it won't go up because of the school district. It'll go longer, but it won't go up. But they might still see their bills go up. And then when they do that, they need to know that that's not us. Yeah, it's not us. It's other factors that are also coming into play. They're still going to have to make a decision based on those kind of things as well.
Yeah.
So if you feel comfortable with that, that is how I'll proceed, and I'll come ready in January to provide that information. I think that's all.
Okay. We'll move on to our policy review for the rental facility policy.
And I'm going to request that we table that one more time. We have not had the opportunity to get the information in.
When we get to action.
It ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, it'll still be there next month. And until then, we just are operating under the rental facility policy that we've had previously, so.
Okay. So let's go ahead and move into our action items. Our first action item is to approve or deny the third reading and adopt rental facility policy.
I make a motion that we table that.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and second to table the third reading of the rental facility policy. All in favor, say aye.
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 We got you, Kirk.
Thanks, Kirk. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The next action item is to approve or deny the change to the negotiated agreement, specifically related to just the wording that was presented.
I move that we approve the change to the negotiated agreement based on the specific wording that was changed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Action item C, approve or deny change to middle school handbook. Is there a motion?
Move that we approve the change to the middle school handbook.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 And do one of you have the resolution in front of you?
I can get it.
Aye.
Any opposed?
There's 3 pages.
Motion passes 5-0.
There shouldn't be 3 pages.
It's just one,
Okay.
this.
That's 3.
You don't have to read. You just have to read.
There's a lot of whereases.
That's 3 pages.
You just
Don't we
have to
have
read down to section 6.
Yeah, we just have to,
Okay,
we don't have
thank
to
you.
read this.
So I make a motion, right?
We already approved it.
Okay, so we have to, legality requires that we read this. So we need a motion to approve or deny the vote, the authorization.
Resolution.
The resolution
When I make
to
the
authorize the
motion, I
vote,
read
for
it,
supplemental levy.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve the resolution for the levy. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of School District Number 134, Canyon County, Idaho, ordering an election to be held on the question of authorizing a supplemental maintenance and operation levy in the amount of $1.5 million for 2 fiscal years, approving a form of ballot, providing for registration of electors, and providing for other matters related thereto. Whereas School District Number 134, Canyon County, Idaho, the district, is a school district created and operating under the laws of the state of Idaho. Whereas, in the opinion of the Board of Trustees of the district, there is a need for the district to raise additional revenues by means of a supplemental maintenance and operation levy in the amount of $1.5 million for 2 fiscal years. And whereas the district is required pursuant to section 33-802 parentheses 3 Idaho Code to submit the question of authorizing a supplemental levy in a specified amount and for a specified time to the electors of the district. Just give me a second. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of School District Number 134, Canyon County, Idaho as follows. Section 1, An election is hereby called to be held within School District Number 134 on Tuesday, March 8, 2022, for the purpose of submitting to the qualified electors of the district the questions set forth in the form of ballot appearing in Section 6 hereof. Section 2, the election shall be held as specified in Title 33, Chapter 4, Idaho Code by Canyon County and conducted by the Canyon County Clerk. Section 3, the polls of the election shall open at the hour of 8:00 a.m. on March 8, 2022, and shall remain open continuously until the hour of 8:00 p.m., at which time the polls shall be closed. Section 4, each person voting at the election shall be, at the time of the election, a qualified elector of the district within the meaning of Article 6, Section 2 of the Idaho Constitution and Section 33-405, Idaho Code, 18 years of age or older, properly registered, and a United States citizen who has resided in the state of Idaho in the district at least 30 days next preceding the election. Section 5, electors must, in order to vote at the election, be registered to vote according to the registration records of Canyon County, Idaho, as required by Sections 33-405 and 34-404 Idaho Code. Section 6, the ballot proposition for the election shall be in substantially the following form.
And then you just need to read the voting, like what they will be on the ballot. So you can skip down to shall the Board of Trustees.
Did I go past that?
Yep. There.
Good times are among us.
There.
Shall the Board of Trustees of School District Number 134 be authorized pursuant to Section 33-802 Idaho Code to certify to the Board of Commissioners of Canyon County, Idaho, a special tax levy in excess of all other amounts certified in the amount of $1.5 million per year for 2 years as a supplemental maintenance and operation levy.
And then you can skip to Section 12 and then that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Section 12, this resolution shall take effect and be enforced immediately upon its passage and approval.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Kirk,
Kirk, you there?
any opposed, say nay. Passes 4-0.
Just make sure. Kirk, are you there?
You might have to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not missing it because it can be 4-0 as long as it's,
Okay.
okay.
The last action item we have is to approve or deny the Deca regional competition trip. Do you have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, and
Do I
then
have to make a motion?
Someone else can do it.
Yeah.
We now have
Not in
an
it.
executive session. Someone wants to.
I move as per section 74-2061B Idaho Code to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, that we move into executive session.
And we'll go in by roll call.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Dempsey,
Yes.
trustee Wagner,
Yes.
trustee McConkey,
Yes.
Thank you.
trustee Adams,
he must be gone.
Yep. Sorry, it's cold outside, everyone.
He was in Salt Lake waiting for his
Yeah.
plane.
Oh, yeah, probably, yeah.
Down in Arizona.
I don't know if I
I'm
heard.
down there